Gegenpress is German for counter-pressing, and it's the idea of immediately pressing intensely to win the ball back as soon as you lose it, which works counterintuitively to the drop and defend and get back into your shape, but it's really, really intense, and we're trying to win the ball back and negate those transitions that happen where an opponent can counter-attack us. So to demonstrate that, I've just set up a blue team in possession in a 4-3-3, and I've loosely arrayed this to be more realistic to a match situation. So we've got a 4 at the back, we've got 3 in midfield, and we've got our wide players and the striker. And then I've just put the opposition Reds in a 4-4-2, who are just shifting across in their defensive block to try and get across. Now, a gegenpress would be if this right back here had played the ball into this midfield and we'd won the ball back, so the 4-4-2 had won the ball back here, then what would happen in blue is that they would immediately look to press really intensely, almost on a sprint to try and win that ball back, and ultimate goal to get that ball back. There's obvious risks to that, because if you do play through it, then the transition happens really quickly, but there's huge benefits to that as well, because we win the ball back really quickly. We normally win it quite high up the pitch, and we can stop the opposition getting comfortable, getting back into their in-possession shape as well, and really stretching us. So that was just a dead simple introduction in terms of what does it mean. So it means counter-press. It's a German word. And the strategy is just as soon as we've lost the ball, everybody around the ball goes and tries and wins that at a sprint immediately and tries to really intensely get that ball back. Now, why this is against the status quo, if you like, so you've got two options really, not two options, but in terms of black and white, two ends of the spectrum. The high end of the spectrum would be gegenpressing, like I've just shown you, where you just intensely try and win the ball. What this red team could also do, so the blue team could also do, if the red team have nicked the ball there, is just look to get in some shape. So that player would come in, we would come back here. Midfielders are going to try and get back behind the ball like this. This wide midfielder is going to try and get back in. They're going to try and get goal side. And I know this ball would be moving at the time, but just to really sort of bring to life what the alternative would be is to try and get a block, a defensive block. Now what that does is it would probably get behind the ball, allow this player to turn out, and now they're probably building and coming out this side to try and get around the opposition here. And then if that shift happened, like it normally does in football, and you'll see this happen all the time, where the ball goes from one side to the other, and the ball goes from one side to the other because they've broken out, they've won the ball back, they've come to this side, the opposition have really smartly moved across. So now we've got to go and try and get around the other side. We've moved that here and moved that here. So that would be the alternative to gegenpressing, would be to drop, delay, get in your shape, restrict space between the lines especially, and try and make the opposition play predictable. Now that adds time to the amount of time it takes to get the ball back. So obviously you might be 2-3 minutes, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, whatever it is, before you get a chance to get that ball back, especially against technically good teams, because they will keep the ball, they'll keep moving it from side to side until they get an opportunity to either get around you, or if they've got to sort of this position here, the block hasn't come across properly, and maybe there's gaps that have appeared between the lines and they can get that ball through, then that's what they're waiting for. They're trying to move the opposition across until one player makes a mistake, they're not in position, and then they've got through. But like I say, the alternative to that would be gegenpressing, where we're just attacking really intensely, and that speeds up the transition. So I've lost the ball, but 10-15 seconds later, faster probably, I've won the ball back, and then we're on the offensive again. So you're taking control. Not easy to execute, and it needs everybody to be aligned, but that is essentially the two ends of the spectrum. So gegenpressing is more than just running hard at the ball. It's systematic, and it's process-driven and system-driven and coordinated. So there's thinking behind it. It's not just a sprint. So if we go back into that scenario again, where the Blues have played into midfield, Reds have stole it there, what we need to think about is blocking some passing lanes. So where might their next action be? And the spaces between the blue players that are going to win the ball back need to be tight because they're going to go in packs. But they need to go in packs in a sense of, how do I restrict the options to this player so we can win the ball back quickly? So this player might think about cutting passing lane here. The obvious ball would be to come in there. They might think about cutting that passing lane. This player might come and cut that passing lane there, so we can't go here or there. This player might work hard to get to here, and they've got some immediate pressure on the ball here. And the other striker might work hard to come in here. So you see how they're not just sprinting at the ball, and that's a simplistic way of explaining it, but the way we would coach it and the way we would teach it is that the passing lanes are really important, and the space that could be used by the opposition to hurt us is really, really important. So we talk about predictability a lot. We're trying to make their next action very predictable. So we're putting immediate pressure on the ball, but also we're exhausting the options that they have. So it takes a lot of energy because we're going to have to get to that quickly, because the next action from the red player takes 1, 2, 3 seconds, especially with technically good teams. But already we're restricting the player into there, we're restricting here, we're restricting here. And that player is probably going to have to turn out and come back this way. Again, they might think about cutting this player off. So we're setting a trap here. We might let them come to here. This player might tuck in here. We might now think about moving on to here. They're moving on, they're tucking in. So again, the whole team is working as a pack and moving up the field. But again, just to reiterate, the first press on the ball is really, really important to get the players' head down. We want to do that. We want to make them make bad decisions, not be able to think about what they might do as their next action. But also the players that are working in the pack are really coordinated in the sense that where might that next action be, so I can get my body into that passing lane. They haven't got a direct line of sight through to another player, especially in the higher areas. And then their options are limited, so they're going to struggle on the ball. They're going to take longer on the ball than they should do, and we should be able to nick it and get it back, or at least push them backwards, which again, we just move on through the stages, through the lines of the pitch. And if we do push them backwards again, we go again and think about the next passing lanes, because it's a chaotic game that changes all the time, right? So we need to think about our movements. Once we cut one passing lane, it might be that we have to shift across somewhere else. But the communication of the team that is doing the Gegenpress needs to be really, really clear and fluid as well. So in summary, block passing lanes, think about space, but it needs to be done at tempo, and the space between the pressing team needs to be really, really short. So we need to close up these gaps. So essentially, it is the same principles as working in a block. The block is just much more aggressive. Okay, much more aggressive. So we're tightening up the spaces in between. It might not look as pretty as just a delay and drop and mid-block, low block, but we're still working as a pack and as a block and getting across to the ball and restricting the space that ball can get into. So that's gegenpressing and space restriction, passing lane restriction. Have a think about those things. So looking at the negatives of the gegenpress, where can it be hurt? I mean, Liverpool did an amazing job at it, right? The Leipzig teams, the RB teams, the Red Bull teams were amazing at it as well. Some of the German teams, Leipzig included, obviously. But what are the cons? I mean, obviously, if this isn't joined up, right? So if the red players come in and won the ball there, maybe we haven't screened into the striker. He can pop straight away. Maybe we're a yard or two off there. He can get turned, and then there's a diagonal ball to get in there. So it's just being able to play through that first press. If we're not intense, because it is extremely fatiguing as well. So to keep that up for 50, 60 minutes, at the hour mark's going to get tough. So that's why you see teams that press really hard, and sometimes they start to get picked apart in the last stage of the game because they're probably working in an uncoordinated fashion. So some players might be doing it, some aren't, which will leave holes that a good team can expose. So again, examples, the blue team might have come across, maybe this first press wasn't as intense as it should be, so all the other players have got in, we've blocked the passing lanes here, maybe this player's here, we've blocked the passing lane here, we've got across, but he's got, this player, he or she has got a bit of time, they've got 2 or 3 seconds on the ball, and we're all tucked across, and that ball may be a long switch, and we're playing in the final third. Just a couple of very simple examples, but the negatives if the intensity goes because it's fatiguing and we can't work as a team together, and it only takes 1 or 2 players to let that whole system down, then good players, if you give them 2 or 3 seconds, will find pockets of space and will play through that. That's why some coaches do just prefer a more rigid low block or mid block, where you're not going to break that down, and it's going to be really, really simple. Okay, just easier to coach, takes less time, less technical. You're not relying on everybody. Well, you are relying on everybody getting into the block, but it's much simpler. It's less intensive, and it's much harder to break down. The negatives of that are that you don't win the ball back as quick as you would in a Gegenpress. You don't win it as high up the pitch as you would do in a Gegenpress. So you get in less of those turnover transitionary moments, but it's much more assured in the sense that we're a bit more comfortable. And although we might not be winning the ball back ourselves, you might make a mistake and it goes out of play, whatever happens. So yeah, the negatives: intensity creates fatigue, and if 1 or 2 players do let you down, then a good opposition are going to play through you and get chances, especially towards the latter end of the game.